I wish to share with you a profound truth about divine compensation. A truth so transformative that it will forever change how you view every seeming loss in your life. For what appears as loss in the world of Caesar is but the setup for divine restoration multiplied. Let me tell you with absolute conviction, the universe, which is nothing more than your own wonderful human imagination externalized, is already in the process of restoring everything you thought was lost. Not merely in equal measure, but pressed down, shaken together, and running over. First, you must grasp this eternal principle. Nothing is ever truly lost in consciousness. What appears as loss in the world of manifestation is merely a temporary state. For all things exist eternally in the mind of God. And are you not told that you are made in His image? Here is the secret of divine restoration that few will ever comprehend. Every seeming loss is actually a divine setup for greater gain. When you truly understand this principle, you will begin to see every loss through the eyes of faith, knowing it is but the catalyst for multiplication. Let me share with you the exact law by which this operates. When something appears to be lost in your world, it is actually being transformed in the invisible realm of consciousness. Like a seed that must fall into the ground and die before it can multiply, your seeming losses are but seeds of multiplication. Now let me reveal to you the precise method by which the universe restores all things, a method so perfect, so divine, that it must repay you not merely what was lost, but with interest compounded by divine law. For every tear you have shed is counted, every disappointment noted, every loss recorded in the divine ledger. When you understand this principle of divine restoration, you will never again fear loss. For what appears as loss in the world of shadows is merely the universe clearing space for greater blessings. Just as a gardener must prune the branches to allow for more abundant growth, so too must certain things be removed from your life to make way for greater good. Here is the exact law. Everything that seems to be taken from you is actually being multiplied in the invisible realm. Your task is not to mourn the loss, but to maintain in consciousness the knowledge of divine restoration. For whatever you hold in consciousness must, by eternal law, externalize in your world. Now, here is something profound about divine compensation that few will ever grasp. The universe doesn't merely replace what was lost, it upgrades it. That relationship that ended, it was making space for a more perfect expression of love. That opportunity that vanished, it was making way for something far greater. Throughout your day, whenever you think of something you've lost, immediately shift your consciousness to this truth. The universe is now restoring this to me multiplied, not with effort or strain, but with the easy naturalness of knowing that divine law is already in operation. When someone walks out of your life, do not see it as loss. See it instead as the universe creating space for a more perfect expression of love. For I tell you with absolute certainty, every tear you have shed over lost love is being transformed into pearls of greater joy. Every moment of loneliness is being converted into deeper connection. Here is the exact principle by which this operates when a relationship ends. It is not truly ending, it is being transformed. The love you gave, the trust you extended, the devotion you showed, none of it is lost. It is all recorded in the divine ledger, and it must by eternal law return to you multiplied. Now let me share with you something profound about relationship restoration that few will comprehend. The universe doesn't just send you another person, it sends you a more perfect expression of what you truly desire. That person who left, they were not your end, they were your training ground for greater love. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing. Every person who has left my life has created space for someone who will love me more perfectly. For remember, in consciousness, all relationships exist in their perfect state, waiting to be claimed by your assumption. Let me reveal to you now how this same law operates in the realm of financial loss. Every dollar that has slipped through your fingers, every opportunity that has seemed to vanish, every financial setback you have experienced, all of it is being transformed in the invisible realm into greater abundance. Every opportunity you believe has passed you by, if it's too late, that echoes in your mind. The universe is already orchestrating divine compensation that will make you marvel at its perfect timing. When you understand this principle, you will see that time itself is nothing but a servant of consciousness. There is no such thing as too late in the realm of divine restoration. For what appears as lost time in the world of Caesar is being compressed and multiplied in the realm of divine compensation. Here is the exact law. Every moment you think you've lost is actually being recycled into greater opportunities. That business you didn't start 10 years ago, the universe was protecting you for a greater expression of that desire. That degree you didn't complete in your youth, divine timing was preparing you for a more perfect manifestation of that knowledge. Now, here is something profound about divine timing that most will never grasp. The universe doesn't operate on human schedules. What appears as delay in the world manifestation is actually perfect timing in the realm of divine order. Your seeming late start is actually your perfect beginning. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing divine timing is always perfect timing. For in the realm of consciousness, there is no past to regret, no future to fear. There is only the eternal now in which all things are possible. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of personal growth. Every setback you've experienced, every failure that has haunted you, every mistake that has caused you shame, all of it is being transformed into wisdom, strength, and understanding. Let me reveal to you now how this divine law operates in the transformation of your perceived failures. For every defeat you've tasted, every dream that seemed to crumble, every venture that appeared to fail, the universe is already alchemizing these experiences into golden opportunities that will astound you with their perfection. When you truly understand this principle, you will see that what you call failure is merely success in rehearsal. For in the divine economy, nothing is wasted, not a single tear, not a moment of doubt, not an ounce of effort. All is being gathered, transformed, and multiplied by divine law. Here is the exact principle. Every failure you've experienced is actually a foundation stone for greater success. That business that failed, it was teaching you invaluable lessons that will ensure your future triumph. That project that collapsed, it was strengthening muscles you didn't even know you needed. Now here's something profound about divine compensation for failure that few will ever comprehend. The universe doesn't just restore your losses, it uses them as raw material to build something far greater than you originally imagined. Your failures are not endpoints, they are divine setups for comebacks that will leave you in awe. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing every failure is being transformed into greater success. For in the realm of consciousness, there is no such thing as failure. There is only feedback, only learning, only growth. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of your dreams and aspirations. Every dream that seemed to die, every goal that appeared out of reach, every aspiration that faded, all of it is being resurrected in more glorious form. When you grasp this principle, you will understand that no talent is ever truly wasted, no ability ever truly dormant. For in the divine economy, everything you have learned, every skill you have acquired, every natural gift you possess is being woven into the tapestry of your divine purpose. Here is the exact law. Every talent you possess, whether expressed or unexpressed, is accumulating divine interest. That artistic ability you never fully developed, it was maturing in the invisible realm. That leadership quality you thought was too late to employ, it was being refined for perfect timing. Now here is something profound about divine compensation for unused talents that most will never grasp. The universe doesn't just give you another chance to use your gifts. It creates scenarios where these talents will be expressed at their highest possible level. Your delayed gifts are not diminished. They are enhanced by the waiting. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing. Every talent I possess is being called forth at the perfect time for its highest expression. For in consciousness, there is no such thing as a wasted gift. There is only perfect timing for perfect expression. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of your spiritual unfoldment. Every insight you've gained, every truth you've glimpsed, every moment of awakening, all of it is being amplified and expanded in divine consciousness. When you comprehend this principle, you will see that emotional suffering is not merely pain to be endured, but rather the birthing process of deeper serenity. For in the divine economy, every tear becomes a pearl of wisdom. Every moment of darkness prepares you for brighter light. Here is the exact law. Every emotional wound you carried is being transformed into emotional intelligence of the highest order. That heartbreak that seemed unbearable, it was expanding your capacity for joy. That anxiety that tormented you, it was teaching you the art of inner peace. Now, here is something profound about emotional compensation that few will ever grasp. The universe doesn't just heal your wounds, it transforms them into sources of strength that will benefit not only you but countless others. Your pain is not purposeless, it is the raw material for your emotional mastery. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing. Every emotional challenge is being transformed into greater peace and understanding. For in consciousness, there is no such thing as wasted pain. There is only transformation, only growth, only expansion. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of your relationships with others. Every misunderstanding, every betrayal, every broken connection, all of it is being rewoven into a tapestry of perfect relationships. When you understand this principle, you will see that physical challenges are not permanent sentences, but temporary states being transformed into greater strength. For in the divine economy, every physical limitation becomes the foundation for extraordinary resilience. Here is the exact law. Every physical challenge you face is actually being transformed into greater vitality. That illness that seemed to rob you of strength, it was building your immune system to levels you never imagined possible. That limitation that frustrated you, it was developing other abilities that lay dormant within. Now, here is something profound about physical compensation that most will never grasp. The universe doesn't just know health, it establishes a new baseline of vitality higher than what you knew before. Your challenges are not your destiny, they are the cocoon from which greater health emerges. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing. Every physical challenge is being transformed into greater strength and vitality. For in consciousness, there is no such thing as permanent limitation. There is only transformation, only renewal, only regeneration. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of your mental faculties. Every moment of confusion, every period of mental fog, every intellectual challenge, all of it is being transformed into greater clarity and understanding. Let me now unveil how this divine law operates in the realm of your creative expression. For every idea that was dismissed, every artistic endeavor that remained incomplete, every creative impulse that was suppressed, the universe is already preparing an outlet of expression that will far exceed your original vision. When you grasp this principle, you will understand that creative energy is never truly lost. It merely accumulates, gathering force like a river behind a dam. For in the divine economy, every unexpressed idea, every unfinished project, every unrealized vision is being amplified in the invisible realm. Here is the exact law. Every creative impulse you've ever felt is alive and growing in consciousness. That book you never wrote, it was becoming richer in your spiritual storehouse. That music you never composed, it was being orchestrated to perfection in the silence. That art you never created, it was maturing into even more magnificent forms. Now here is something profound about creative compensation that few will ever comprehend. The universe doesn't just return your creative energy, it returns it multiplied and refined by divine wisdom. Your delayed expressions are not diminished, they are enhanced by the waiting, enriched by your experiences, deepened by your growth. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing. Every creative impulse I've ever felt is now finding perfect expression. For in consciousness, there is no such thing as lost inspiration. There is only perfect timing for perfect expression. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of your divine purpose. Every calling you've ignored, every mission you've postponed, every purpose you've questioned, all of it is being woven into a tapestry of perfect fulfillment. Every moment of divine connection that felt lost, the universe is already preparing a spiritual awakening that will transcend all your previous experiences. When you understand this principle, you will see that spiritual drought is not a punishment but a preparation. For in the divine economy, every moment of spiritual longing, every feeling of separation, every questioning of faith is being transformed into deeper wisdom and more profound connection. Here is the exact law. Every spiritual experience you've ever had, whether recognized or not, is accumulating in your consciousness. That meditation practice that seemed ineffective, it was building a foundation for profound enlightenment. Those prayers that appeared to go unheard, they were being answered in ways far beyond your current understanding. Now here is something profound about spiritual compensation that most will never grasp. The universe doesn't just restore your spiritual connection, it deepens it beyond anything you could have imagined. Your periods of spiritual dryness are not failures, they are the necessary preparation for greater spiritual heights. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing. Every spiritual effort I've made is now bearing fruit multiplied. For in consciousness, there is no such thing as wasted devotion. There is only deepening, only expansion, only greater revelation. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of your divine relationships. Every spiritual companion who has left your path, every teacher who seemed to disappear, every spiritual community you've lost, all of it is being transformed into more perfect spiritual connections. Now let me reveal to you how this divine law operates in the realm of your material abundance. For every financial loss you've suffered, every material possession that slipped away, every abundance that seemed to diminish, the universe is already orchestrating a restoration that will exceed your grandest expectations. When you truly grasp this principle, you will understand that material loss is merely the mercer's way of clearing space for greater abundance. For in the divine economy, every dollar lost, every possession released, every resource diminished is being multiplied in the invisible realm. Here is the exact law. Every material loss you've experienced is actually an investment in future abundance. That money that disappeared, it was being transformed into greater wealth. That home you had to leave, it was making way for a more perfect dwelling. That business that failed, it was setting the stage for greater success. Now here is something profound about material compensation that few will ever comprehend. The universe doesn't just replace what was lost. It returns it in a form that better serves your highest good. Your losses are not permanent. They are divine setups for supernatural comeback stories. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing. Every material loss is being transformed into greater abundance. For in consciousness, there is no such thing as loss. There is only transformation, only multiplication, only increase. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of your divine opportunities. Every chance you missed, every door that closed, every opportunity that vanished, all of it is being reconstructed into greater possibilities. You will see that divine timing supersedes human timing. For in divine economy, there is no such thing as too late. There is only perfect timing, only divine orchestration, only supernatural acceleration. Here is the exact law. Every moment you think you've lost is being compressed and multiplied in divine consciousness. That opportunity you think passed you by, it was merely preparing you for something greater. That timing you thought you missed, it was protecting you for perfect manifestation. Now, here is something profound about divine timing that most will never grasp. The universe doesn't operate on your calendar. It operates on divine synchronicity. What appears as delay in human time is actually perfect alignment in divine time. Your missed timing is actually divine protection. Throughout your consciousness, maintain this knowing. Divine timing is always working in my favor. For in consciousness, there is no past to regret, no future to fear. There is only the eternal now, where all possibilities exist. Let me share with you now how this same principle operates in the realm of your divine connections. Every relationship that ended prematurely, every partnership that dissolved, every connection that seemed interrupted, all of it is being rewoven into more perfect unions. Now let me bring all these eternal principles to their ultimate culmination. For what I have shared with you tonight is not merely theory, it is the very science of divine compensation, the absolute law of spiritual restoration. Remember this fundamental truth. The universe, which is your own wonderful human imagination pushed out, must restore all things in divine order. Not by human calculation, but by divine multiplication. Not by mortal timing, but by immortal orchestration. Here is your final instruction. Take all that I have revealed to you tonight and live in the absolute assurance that every loss, every setback, every disappointment is already being transformed into something far greater than you could have imagined. For this is not mere positive thinking. This is divine law. I tell you with complete authority, if you will maintain this consciousness of divine mysticism, your entire world must reshape itself to reflect this truth. Every tear will be transformed into triumph, every loss into gain, every ending into a more glorious beginning. Go forth now in the absolute knowing that the universe is already repaying you for everything you thought was lost. Not in equal measure, but pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For this is the promise of divine compensation, and the promise is sure. Remember, you are not calling forth something that does not exist. You are simply awakening to what eternally is. Everything you have ever lost still exists in divine substance, multiplying, expanding, growing, waiting for your consciousness to align with its perfect restoration. Let this be your conviction as you leave here tonight. The universe owes you, and it always pays its debts with interest. Every loss has been recorded. Every tear has been counted. Every disappointment has been noted. And now by divine law, everything is being restored, multiplied. For this is the eternal promise, and it cannot fail. What appears as loss in the world of Caesar is but the setup for divine restoration beyond measure. The end has been reached, for you now possess the key to all restoration, your consciousness of divine compensation. Use it faithfully, use it consistently, and watch every loss transform into gain multiplied. When you pray, when you desire, do you beg and plead as though speaking to some distant deity who may or may not grant your wishes? Or do you know with unwavering certainty that what you have imagined in the theater of your mind is already accomplished? This is the secret I wish to impart to you tonight, to live as though God has already answered. Consider for a moment what it means to live in the end. Many approach manifestation backwards. They believe that when their desire is fulfilled in the outer world, then they will feel the joy, the relief, the satisfaction of having received it. But I tell you, this feeling precedes manifestation. The world is nothing more than the outpicturing of states of consciousness. If you would claim a thing as yours, you must first assume the feeling of already possessing it. There is a passage in Scripture that illuminates this principle with crystal clarity. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Not that you will receive it at some distant point in the future, but that you have received it now. The secret is to live from the end, not for it. Let me share a simple truth that many find difficult to accept. The world you perceive is nothing more than your own consciousness pushed out. There is no one to change but self. There is nothing to change but your concept of self. If you would change the outer world, you must first change your inner assumptions. Tonight, I wish to guide you to that place within yourself where creation has already been completed. For all that you could ever desire already exists in the realm of infinite possibility. Your task is not to create it anew, but to simply appropriate what already is. Imagine, if you will, that you have a desire. Perhaps it is financial abundance, vibrant health, a loving relationship, or success in your chosen field. The natural tendency of man is to look at present circumstances and say, but how? How can this desire possibly be realized given my current reality? And in that moment, imagination is subordinated to the evidence of the senses. This is the cardinal error. Your senses show you only the effects of past beliefs and assumptions. They cannot show you what is possible. They can only report what has already been manifested. To concern yourself with the how is to place limitations upon the limitless. Instead, I urge you to ask yourself, how would I feel if my desire were already fulfilled? Then, in the quiet of your own mind, capture that feeling. For feeling is the secret. Every night before you enter into sleep, assume the consciousness of already being what you want to be, of already having what you want to have. Sleep, that mystic state, is the time when the subconscious mind is most impressionable. As you slumber, the seed you have planted will be watered and nourished, growing into manifestation by laws divine and perfect. There was a man who came to me in dire financial straits. His business was failing, debts were mounting, and fear had taken hold of his mind. I told him what I'm telling you. to live as though God had already answered his prayer for abundance. Each night, this man would feel the joy and relief of financial freedom. He would count imaginary money, feel crisp bills between his fingers, write imaginary checks with ease and gratitude. He would fall asleep in this state of wealth consciousness. Within a month, an opportunity presented itself that he could never have conceived of through conscious reasoning. A merger was proposed that not only saved his business but expanded it beyond his highest expectations. The outer circumstances rearranged themselves to match his inner assumption of wealth. Was this mere coincidence? I tell you, there is no such thing as coincidence. There is only the working of law. As a man assumes, so does he become. Consider the story of another who desired health after years of chronic illness. Instead of focusing on symptoms and limitations, she began to live from the state of perfect health. In her imagination, she moved with vitality, breathed deeply without pain, and gave thanks for her strong, healthy body. She persisted in this assumption despite all evidence to the contrary. Medical tests eventually confirmed what she had already known in consciousness. Her condition had dramatically improved. The doctors called it spontaneous remission. But there was nothing spontaneous about it. It was the natural result of a shift in consciousness. For consciousness is the only reality. You see, the outer world must and will conform to your inner assumptions. It has no choice in the matter, for that is the law by which creation operates. Now, let us address a question that inevitably arises. What of efforts that seem to fail? What of desires that remain unfulfilled despite applying these principles? I say to you that there is no failure in the proper use of imagination. What appears as failure is simply the revelation of a conflict within consciousness. Perhaps you affirm one thing while deeply believing another. Perhaps you mentally argue against your own good. Or perhaps, and this is often the case, you have not truly assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled with sufficient intensity and persistence. For imagination to be effective must be faithful. You cannot mentally vacillate between states of having and not having. You must be single-minded in your assumption. As James warned, he who wavers is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Living as though God has already answered means maintaining your assumption despite all evidence to the contrary. It means being faithful to the unseen reality of your desire fulfilled, while the senses still report the old story. This faithfulness is not always easy. The world will test your resolve. Friends and family may mock your new attitude when circumstances have not yet changed. Your own doubts may arise like specters in the night. This is the wilderness period, the interval between your assumption and its manifestation in the outer world. During this period, you must guard your mind as one would guard a precious treasure. For your mind is indeed the treasury from which all your experiences are drawn. Mental diets are as necessary as physical ones. Feed your mind with the assumption of your wish fulfilled, and starve all contrary thoughts by withdrawing attention from them. Let me tell you something of the nature of assumption. An assumption is not a verbal statement, though it may begin as one. A true assumption is a state of consciousness, a mood, a feeling that permeates your entire being. When you genuinely assume a state, you think from it, not of it. There is a world of difference between the two. To think of being wealthy is to implicitly acknowledge that you are not wealthy now. But to think from wealth is to view the world through the eyes of a wealthy person. How would you react to a friend's request if you were wealthy? How would you plan your day? What thoughts would cross your mind as you make purchases or review your finances? This is thinking from the state. And it is this type of thinking that has the power to transform your world. For as you assume a state, you are transferred into it. Your assumption, though false to your senses, if persisted in, will harden into fact. There is a technique I have often shared that aids in making this transfer of consciousness. I call it revision. At the end of each day, before you enter into sleep, review the events that were not in harmony with your ideal. In your imagination, rewrite these scenes as you would have wished them to be. If you had a disagreement with a loved one, revise it to reflect understanding and harmony. If you received disappointing news, revise it to reflect the news you would have wanted to hear. This is not mere wishful thinking or denial of reality. This is the conscious exercise of your divine power to create reality. For remember, there is no reality outside of consciousness. What you take to be an objective, immutable world is really a malleable, plastic substance waiting to be shaped by your assumptions. The Bible tells us that God called forth that which did not exist as though it did, and so it came to be. This is the pattern we are to follow. Now, let me address a common misconception. Some believe that this teaching encourages passivity, that one need only imagine and then wait for desires to manifest without taking action. This is a misunderstanding of the principle. Action will always be necessary in this world of effects, but the action that stems from a changed consciousness is qualitatively different from the action that is taken in an attempt to change consciousness. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you will be compelled from within to take whatever action is necessary for its manifestation. This action will feel natural, effortless, and inspired rather than forced or contrived. A student once asked me, "But Neville, shall I not make plans for the future?" I replied, "Make your plans in accordance with the state you have assumed. If you have assumed wealth, make the plans a wealthy person would make. If you have assumed health, make the plans a healthy person would make. Your actions must be in alignment with your assumption. This is walking by faith and not by sight. Faith is nothing more than consciousness of being that which you desire to be. Walking by faith means living from the state of consciousness of your wish fulfilled, while your senses may still tell you otherwise. I recall a letter from a woman who had attended one of my lectures. She had been separated from her husband for many years and desired reconciliation, though there had been no contact between them. After hearing these principles, she began to sleep each night in the assumption that her husband was beside her. She would feel his presence, speak to him in her imagination, and feel the joy of their reunion. Within 2 weeks, she received a telephone call from him. He was in town and wished to see her. Their meeting led to a complete reconciliation, and they never again separated. What brought this about? Not her actions in the outer world, for she had taken none. It was her shifting consciousness, her faithful assumption that brought about the change in circumstances. Now, some of you may be wondering about time frames. How long, you ask, will it take for my assumption to materialize in the outer world? This is a natural question, but one that betrays a misunderstanding of the process. Time is not a factor in the operation of this law. What is a factor is the intensity of your assumption and your faithfulness to it. Some desires manifest instantly, others take longer to unfold. The key is to continue living from the end, undeterred by the passage of time and the lack of physical evidence. Remember the story of Joseph in Scripture. He had a dream, a vision of his brothers bowing down to him. Years passed, and circumstances seemed to take him further and further from his vision's fulfillment. He was sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned. Yet in God's perfect timing, every detail of his dream was realized. This teaches us an important lesson. The vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens, it flowers. If it seems long, wait, for it is sure, and it will not be late. Your role is not to set the timetable, but to maintain the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. Now I'd like to speak about something that many spiritual teachings neglect: the importance of your self-concept in the manifestation process. For you cannot long maintain an assumption that is at odds with your concept of self. If deep within you believe yourself unworthy of love, you may find it difficult to sustain the assumption of being in a loving relationship. If you secretly believe that wealth is corrupting, or that wealthy people are somehow immoral, you will sabotage your efforts to manifest abundance. Therefore, the greatest assumption of all is that of being God's beloved child, heir to all the riches of heaven and earth. As you read in Scripture, all things are yours. This is not a statement of future possibility, but of present fact. All that the Father has is already yours. When you truly accept this, you will find it easier to live from the state of your wish fulfilled, whatever that wish may be. For you will know that you are not seeking to get something you lack, but simply to claim what is already yours. This brings us to another crucial aspect of living as though God has already answered: gratitude. Genuine gratitude is not merely being thankful for what you have received in the past or hope to receive in the future. True gratitude springs from the knowledge that what you desire is already yours in consciousness. Gratitude then becomes the feeling tone of your assumption. You give thanks not to make something happen, but because it has already happened in the one reality that truly matters, the reality of consciousness. There was a woman who desired a specific amount of money to pay off debts that had accumulated over years. Rather than focusing on the debts and the lack of money, she began to live each day in a state of gratitude for having received this sum. She would count the exact amount in her imagination before sleep. She would feel the relief, the freedom, the joy of debt-free living. She maintained this attitude of gratitude for several weeks, telling no one of what she was doing. Then, through a series of events that no one could have predicted, involving an overlooked insurance policy and a small inheritance, she received almost to the penny the exact sum she had been imagining. Was this a miracle? By the world's standards, perhaps. But by the standards of the law we are discussing, it was simply the natural outcome of her faithfully assumed state. For that which is assumed, if persisted in, must objectify itself in the outer world. I want to address something that is often misunderstood in spiritual teachings, the nature of God. For if you are to live as though God has already answered, you must understand who this God is that answers prayer. God is not some being separate from yourself, waiting in the heavens to grant or deny your petitions based on some arbitrary standard of worthiness. God is your own wonderful human imagination. This is the creative power that shapes your world. This is the I am at the center of your being. When Scripture says, I am that I am, it is revealing the nature of God and the nature of man, for they are one. Whatever you attach to the phrase one am in your consciousness becomes your reality. I am poor. I am wealthy. I am loved. I am neglected. I am healthy. I am sick. These are all creative statements. Therefore, when you imagine your desires fulfilled and feel the reality of it, you are experiencing God answering your prayer in the only place prayer is ever answered, in consciousness. Living as though God has already answered means claiming your rightful place as a creative being made in God's image. It means recognizing that the power to shape your life lies not in some external force, but in your own consciousness. Let me share with you an experience that illustrates this principle in action. Years ago, a young man attended my lectures who had been seeking employment without success. He had the qualifications, he had the experience, but doors seemed to close before he could even present himself. After learning these principles, he began to sleep each night in the assumption that he was employed in the position he desired. He would feel himself sitting at the desk, interacting with colleagues, receiving his paycheck. Within 10 days, he was called for an interview at a company he had not even known. A mutual acquaintance had recommended him. The position offered was even better than the one he had been imagining, with greater responsibility and higher compensation. What brought this about? His change of consciousness. You see, the world is not responding to your wishes, your hopes, or your efforts. It is responding with mathematical precision to your state of consciousness. Change the cause, consciousness, and you change the effect, circumstances. Now let us delve deeper into the practical application of this principle. How exactly does one live as though God has already answered? It begins with a decision to mentally dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled, despite all appearances to the contrary. This decision must then be followed by mental and emotional discipline. Throughout your day, whenever your thoughts drift back to the problem or the lack, gently bring them back to the solution, to the state of fulfillment. This is the practice of mindfulness applied to creative imagination. There are specific times when this practice is most effective. The moments before sleep and upon first awakening are particularly potent, for it is during these twilight states that the conscious and subconscious minds are most permeable to one another. As you lay your head upon the pillow, mentally construct a scene that would imply your desire has been fulfilled. Make it as vivid and as real as possible. Involve all your senses. What would you see? What would you hear? What would you touch? How would you feel emotionally? Then allow yourself to fall asleep within this imaginative act. Similarly, in those drowsy moments upon awakening, Before the concerns of the day flood in, revisit your imaginal scene. Feel again the joy, the gratitude, the fulfillment. This plants the seed deeply in the fertile soil of the subconscious mind. Throughout your waking hours, there will be moments when doubt arises. This is natural. The senses are persistent in their reports, and old habits of thought do not yield easily. When this occurs, do not fight or resist these thoughts. Instead, gently return to your assumption. Remember, energy flows where attention goes. Withdraw attention from the unwanted state and place it firmly in the state of your wish fulfilled. A technique that many find helpful during these moments is the simple question, how would I be feeling right now if my desire were already fulfilled? Then, without waiting for the logical mind to intervene, immediately adopt that feeling state. Feeling is the secret, the bridge between imagination and manifestation. Now, there may be those among you who are thinking, but this all seems like self-deception. Isn't it dishonest to pretend that I have something when clearly I don't? This question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality. What you perceive as solid, immutable reality is actually the shadow cast by previous states of consciousness. Your physical environment, your circumstances, your relationships, all are projections of states you have occupied in consciousness. They have no independent reality apart from the meaning and power you give them. Therefore, when you assume a new state in consciousness, you are not lying to yourself or practicing self-deception. You are exercising your divine prerogative to choose the state from which you will view the world. This is not pretense, it is the highest form of truth, acknowledging the creative power of your consciousness. The world may call this madness, but remember what Scripture tells us. The wisdom of God is foolishness to men. Those who understand this principle and apply it consistently find that the world has no choice but to reshape itself around their assumptions. I am often asked about desire, its nature, and its role in this process. Some spiritual teachings suggest that desire itself is the root of suffering and should be transcended. Others teach that desire is God's way of guiding us toward our highest good. My understanding is this: desire in its purest form is God's voice within you, calling you toward the expansion and fuller expression of life. However, desire becomes problematic when it is rooted in a sense of lack or incompleteness, when you believe that you need this thing outside yourself to be whole or happy. The secret is to desire from a position of fullness, not emptiness. To want what you want because it would be a joyful expression of life, not because you believe it would complete you. This subtle distinction makes all the difference in how your desire is manifested. When you live as though God has already answered, you are desiring from fullness. You are claiming that in consciousness your desire is already fulfilled. You are complete, whole, lacking nothing. From this state, manifestation flows naturally and effortlessly. Let me address another question that frequently arises. What if my desire involves other people? Surely I cannot control another's free will. This concern stems from a misunderstanding of both the nature of consciousness and the nature of free will. Everyone in your world is an aspect of your consciousness pushed out. This does not mean they lack free will. It means that real them that appears in your reality conforms to your assumptions about them. If you assume that someone is uncooperative, that version of them will appear in your experience. If you assume they are helpful and kind, that is the version you will encounter. This is not manipulation, it is the law of consciousness in operation. Therefore, when your desire involves others, you need not worry about infringing upon their free will. Simply assume that they are already the way you desire them to be. In your imagination, hear them saying what you wish to hear. See them doing what you wish them to do. Feel the satisfaction of this harmonious relationship. Then release them completely. Do not specify how or when they must conform to this assumption. Give infinite intelligence the freedom to bring about your desire in ways that serve the highest good of all involved. I recall a woman who had a strained relationship with her daughter-in-law. Despite her best efforts to be friendly, there was always tension between them. After learning these principles, she began to imagine conversations with her daughter-in-law that were warm and loving. She would fall asleep feeling the joy of this harmonious relationship. Within weeks, without any direct action on her part, her daughter-in-law's attitude began to soften. Invitations were extended, Pleasant phone calls were received and a genuine friendship began to blossom. The woman had changed no one but herself, her concept of her daughter-in-law, and her outer world reshaped itself accordingly. This brings us to another important aspect of living as though God has already answered: detachment from outcomes. While this may seem contradictory to what I have been sharing, it is actually complementary. To live in the end means to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But attached to this must be a willingness to let the infinite wisdom of God determine the how and the when of its manifestation. Your role is to remain faithful to the state you have assumed. God's role, the role of your own marvelous creative consciousness, is to bring about the manifestation in its own perfect way and timing. This detachment is not indifference. Rather, it is supreme confidence in the perfect working of the law. It is the peaceful certainty that what has been assumed in consciousness must objectify itself in reality. It is the difference between white-knuckle determination and graceful allowing. Those who master this art of detached assumption find that their manifestations often exceed their specific mental pictures. They receive not just what they imagine, but something even more perfectly suited to their desires. For the infinite intelligence of God knows what you truly desire better than your conscious mind does. Now I want to address what might be called the shadow side of this practice. What happens when we unconsciously assume negative states? For the law works with equal precision whether our assumptions are positive or negative. Many live their entire lives assuming lack, limitation, illness, or conflict, and then wonder why these conditions persist despite their best efforts to change them. They do not realize that their assumptions, often hidden beneath the surface of conscious awareness, are creating the very conditions they seek to escape. This is why self-observation is so crucial. Begin to notice the assumptions that underlie your thoughts, words, and emotions. What are you accepting as true about yourself and your world? What states are you unknowingly occupying? When you identify a negative assumption, do not fight or resist it. Remember, what you resist persists. Instead, simply withdraw your attention from it and place it lovingly on the assumption you wish to embody. For consciousness cannot serve two masters. It will follow where attention leads. There is a phenomenon I have observed in the application of this principle that I call the crisis of faith. Often just before a desire manifests, circumstances seem to worsen. It is as though the old state of consciousness is making a final stand before surrendering to the new. During this crisis, many abandon their assumption and revert to the old state, not realizing how close they were to success. This is the time for renewed faithfulness to your assumption. This is when living as though God has already answered is most powerfully tested and most powerfully demonstrated. Those who remain steadfast during this crisis, who continue to live from the end despite contrary evidence, are those who most quickly and dramatically manifest their desires. They have passed the test of faith, proving they are ready to embody the state they have assumed. Let me share with you a concept that may help during these times of testing: the Sabbath. In the biblical tradition, the Sabbath represents rest, the cessation of labor. In the context of conscious creation, it signifies that point where you rest from your mental labors, knowing the work is complete in consciousness. To enter this Sabbath state is to feel such certainty about your assumption that you no longer feel the need to repeat the imaginative act. There is a deep knowing that what you have assumed is already done. This is the perfect state of detached assumption I spoke of earlier. As you practice living as though God has already answered, you will begin to experience synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that confirm you are on the right track. A book falls open to just the page you needed to read. A chance conversation provides the very information you were seeking. A seemingly random meeting leads to the perfect opportunity. These synchronicities are not accidents. They are the subtle workings of the law as the outer world begins to conform to your inner assumptions. They are confirmations that the bridge of incidents leading to your desire's fulfillment is being built. Welcome these signs with gratitude, but do not become dependent on them. Your faith must rest not on external evidence, but on the conviction that what is assumed in consciousness must manifest in reality. This is the true meaning of faith, the evidence of things not seen. As we draw toward the conclusion of our discussion, I want to emphasize one final point. This principle of living as though God has already answered is not merely a technique for manifesting specific desires. It is a way of life, a state of being that aligns you with your divine nature. When you truly understand that your consciousness is the one and only reality, that the world you experience is simply consciousness objectified, you will approach all of life differently. You will move through your days with a quiet confidence and inner peace that comes from knowing you are the author of your experience. You will no longer be a victim of circumstances, but a conscious creator of your reality. You will no longer plead with an external God, but will commune with the God within. Your own wonderful human imagination. You will no longer live in anxious anticipation of what might be, but will rest in the certainty of what already is in consciousness. This is the freedom that awaits those who master the art of living as though God has already answered. This is the promise of the principle we have explored tonight. In the days and weeks to come, I encourage you to test this principle for yourself. Start with something small if you wish, something that does not arouse intense doubt or resistance. Assume the feeling of having already received it. Live from that assumption. Watch as the outer world reshapes itself to match your inner state. As you prove the Lord in these small ways, your confidence will grow. You will be ready to apply it to progressively larger desires. Eventually, you will reach a point where no desire seems impossible, for you will have experienced firsthand the truth that all things are possible to God, the God of your own consciousness. Remember always that the secret of manifestation is not in doing, but in being. Not in future action, but in present assumption. Not in working toward your desire, but in living from its fulfillment. This is the pearl of great price, the treasure hidden in the field of your own consciousness. To possess it, you must sell all your former beliefs about the nature of reality, all your attachment to appearances, all your identification with lack and limitation. But oh, what a magnificent exchange! For in return, you receive the kingdom of heaven, the realization that all you could ever desire already exists within you as potential, waiting only for your assumption to call it forth into expression. So tonight, as you lay your head upon your pillow, do so with this knowledge: God has already answered. Your desire is already fulfilled in the only reality that matters, the reality of consciousness. From this state of fulfilled desire, fall asleep. Let this be your prayer, your affirmation, your unwavering assumption. And as the days unfold, watch in wonder as your outer world begins to mirror what you have inwardly assumed. For this is the law and the prophets, the secret of the ages now revealed to those with eyes to see and ears to hear. God has already answered. Live from that glorious assumption and watch as miracles unfold in your life. I am not referring to some distant deity sitting on a cloud, passing judgment on his creation. No, the God of whom I speak is your own wonderful human imagination. This is the God that created all things and continues to create your world even now. The eternal body of man is the imagination that is God himself, as Blake so brilliantly expressed. This divine presence is not separate from you. It is the very core of your being. It is the I am consciousness that declares itself whenever you say, I am. When you state, I am wealthy, I am healthy, I am loved, you are activating the creative power of God within you. This power never sleeps, never fails, and never abandons the work it has begun in you. Perhaps you look at your current circumstances and see evidence that contradicts the fulfillment of your desires. You may see limitation where you crave abundance, illness where you long for health, or solitude where you yearn for companionship. And you wonder, has God abandoned me? Is the process broken? I tell you with absolute certainty, God is not done with you. Your physical senses present a world of effects, but the true causative power lies in your imagination. What you now experience as your reality was once only imagined. And what you now imagine with feeling and conviction must, by law, externalize itself in your world. The divine process. The process by which imagination creates reality follows an inviolable pattern. First comes the seed, your assumption. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you plant this seed in the fertile soil of consciousness. Then comes a period of gestation, During this interval, the conditions necessary for your assumptions' fulfillment are being arranged in ways your conscious mind cannot perceive. Many abandon their desires during this critical gestation period, not understanding the perfect timing of divine law. They mistake the silence for absence, the darkness for defeat. But I tell you, this is the very moment to intensify your faith, to deepen your conviction that God's work in you continues unabated, unseen. The seed must decompose before the new growth appears. There is always a period of darkness, of apparent nothingness, before the manifestation of the new state. This is nature's way, and nature is but God's method of operation. Consider the miracle of a simple seed. Place it in the ground, and to all appearances it dies. There is a period where nothing seems to happen. Is the process incomplete? Has nature abandoned its purpose? No, beneath the surface, invisible to human eyes, a magnificent transformation is occurring. The seed casing breaks down, releasing the life force within. Roots extend downward. A shoot pushes upward, and in perfect timing, not a moment too soon or too late, new life emerges into the light. So it is with the seeds of your desires. Once planted in consciousness through the feeling of the wish fulfilled, they enter a period of invisible development. This is not a time of inactivity, but of the most profound activity beyond the detection of your senses. Do not despair during this period of seeming nothingness. Do not interpret the silence as abandonment. God is not done with you. The divine process continues, arranging the 1,000 details necessary for your assumption to flower into fact. Persistence in the face of contradiction. The world of Caesar, the world of physical evidence, will always present facts that contradict your new assumption. This is the greatest test of your faith. Can you persist in your assumption despite the testimony of your senses? When the man with the withered hand was commanded to stretch it forth, all physical evidence argued against the possibility. His experience, his memory, medical opinion, all would have counseled against attempting the impossible. Yet in that critical moment, he did not consult his past, but activated his imagination to feel what it would be like to have a perfectly functioning hand. He persisted in this new assumption despite all contradictory evidence, and his hand was restored. You too must develop this capacity to persist in your new assumption regardless of contradictory appearances. Your physical senses can only show you what has been manifested from past imaginings. They cannot reveal what is being shaped now through your present act of imagination. Remember the words attributed to Jesus, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Righteous judgment is to judge from the standpoint of your wish fulfilled, to see what is not yet visible to mortal eyes. When you find yourself beset by doubts, when the voice of reason lists all the obstacles to your desires' fulfillment, when well-meaning friends counsel you to be realistic, this is the moment to reaffirm, God is not done with me. The process is unfolding perfectly. That which I've assumed in my imagination is already mine in the reality of consciousness, and must shortly become mine in the world of effects. The law of identical harvest. A fundamental law of creation is that you always reap what you sow. Your harvest will be identical in kind to your seed. If you plant corn, you will not harvest wheat. If you plant assumptions of lack, you cannot reap abundance. Many pray fervently for one state, while constantly imagining themselves in its opposite. They pray for health while fixating on symptoms. They desire wealth while mentally rehearsing their financial worries. They long for love while imaginatively dwelling on their loneliness. Then they wonder why God seems to have abandoned their cause. I tell you, God has not abandoned you. The Lord is functioning perfectly. You are experiencing precisely what you have planted in consciousness through your dominant assumptions. If you desire a different harvest, you must plant different seeds. You must revise your concept of self. Instead of accepting the suggestion of limitation, consciously choose the assumption of fulfillment. Feel yourself to be the person you wish to be. Experience imaginatively the state you long to occupy. Do this with the conviction that God's process is at work within you. Your conscious assumption activates the divine creative power, which then works day and night, independently of your conscious awareness, to bring about the conditions necessary for your assumption's fulfillment. The present moment is the point of creation. Many believe that fulfillment lies in some distant future, that they must wait for God to complete his work. But I tell you, the only point of creation is the eternal now. God's work in you is completed the moment you fully accept your assumption as fact. In imagination, step into the state of your wish fulfilled. Experience it with all the vividness you can muster. Feel the naturalness of being what you desire to be. Then know with absolute certainty that in the reality of consciousness, the only true reality or desire is already fulfilled. The time it takes for this inner fulfillment to become apparent to your senses is determined by the intensity of your feeling and the naturalness of your assumption. Some desires manifest instantly, while others require a period of unfoldment. But make no mistake, the creative act is completed in the moment of assumption. God is not working toward the fulfillment of your desire. In the moment you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, that desire was granted. What follows is not creation, but the emergence into visibility of that which is already complete, the Sabbath rest. After God completed his work of creation, he rested. This is a profound mystical truth that holds the key to successful manifestation. When you have planted the seed of your desire through conscious assumption, you must enter the Sabbath, the state of mental rest. Many undermine their creative work by continuing to labor anxiously after the seed is planted. They dig up the seed repeatedly to check if it's growing. They water it with tears of doubt and fear. They hover over it with the anxious concern of a parent whose lack of trust impedes the natural development of their child. To trust the process is to enter the Sabbath rest. Having assumed the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you release all anxiety about how and when it will appear in your world. You know with unshakable confidence that what you have planted must, by divine law, come to harvest. This rest is not inactivity, but the highest form of activity, the activity of faith. It is a mental stillness that reflects absolute confidence in the perfect operation of divine law. It is the peace that comes from knowing that God is not done with you, that the process continues perfectly without your anxious supervision. The principle of revision. If you have planted seeds contrary to your desires, if you have accepted limiting assumptions that now manifest as unwanted conditions, do not despair. The divine power of revision is always available to you. Through the art of revision, you can literally re-roar past. As you drop into sleep tonight, replay the events of your day, not as they occurred, but as you wish they had occurred. Feel the joy, the satisfaction, the fulfillment that would be yours had things gone ideally. This is not mere fantasy or escapism. This is the activation of the divine process of creation. Your imaginal act, impressed upon the malleable substance of consciousness, will work backward and forward to bring about conditions in harmony with your revised version. God is not done with your past any more than he is done with your future. All time exists simultaneously in the eternal now of consciousness. What you have experienced as past remains alive and subject to revision through the power of your imagination. The bridge of incidents between your present state and the fulfillment of your desire stretches what I call the bridge of incidents, a series of seemingly unrelated ends that lead inevitably to your desired end. You need not concern yourself with constructing this bridge. That is the work of the divine process. Your task is simply to occupy the end, to dwell mentally in the state of your wish fulfilled, and to trust the perfect operation of the law to bring about all intermediate steps. These steps may not follow the path you would consciously choose. They may include apparent setbacks or detours. The human intellect, with its limited perspective, cannot map the shortest route between desire and fulfillment. But divine intelligence, operating through your assumption, knows the perfect way. Often, what appears to be a devastating disappointment proves to be a necessary link in the chain of fulfillment. The job you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the investment that failed, all may be essential components of the bridge leading to something far greater than you had imagined. This is why trust in the process is so essential. When you truly understand that God is not done with you, you can meet every circumstance with the conviction that it forms part of the perfect pattern leading to your good. Living from the end. The most powerful position from which to create is the end. When you mentally dwell in the end, the state of your wish fulfilled, you align yourself with the creative current that brings all things into being. Most people live from memory rather than from imagination. They allow their present to be determined by their past. But the awakened individual lives from imagination, allowing their present to be shaped by their chosen future. To live from the end is to occupy mentally the state you desire to externalize. It is to feel the naturalness of being what you want to be. It is to experience the satisfaction of having what you want to have. As you persist in this mental occupation, the present circumstances of your life begin to rearrange themselves to conform to your assumption. People, events, and conditions align perfectly to make your invisible assumption a visible fact. This is not wishful thinking or positive affirmation. This is the operation of immutable law. Your consciousness is the only reality. What you accept as true in consciousness must externalize itself in your world. There is no power outside of your own wonderful human imagination that can override this process. The pruning process. Sometimes the manifestation of your desire requires the removal of certain elements from your life. This is the necessary pruning that precedes new growth. Just as a gardener prunes a rose bush, cutting away even healthy branches to promote more abundant flowering, so the divine process sometimes removes people, circumstances, or conditions that cannot harmonize with your new assumption. This pruning may temporarily appear as loss, as disappointment, as abandonment. But I assure you, it is evidence not that God has abandoned his work in you, but that the process continues perfectly. Every apparent loss creates space for something better to enter. Every relationship that ends makes room for more fulfilling connection. Every door that closes propels you toward the open door that leads to your good. Trust the pruning process. Know that nothing essential to your happiness and fulfillment can be taken from you. That which is removed simply cannot accompany you into your new state of being. The all above assumption supersedes all lesser laws. Many believe themselves bound by limitations, physical laws, heredity, environment, past mistakes, the actions of others. They see these as insurmountable obstacles to the fulfillment of their desires. But I tell you, the law of assumption supersedes all lesser laws. When you firmly assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, all other factors must rearrange themselves to conform to your assumption. The laws of physics, biology, economics, and social interaction are not absolute. They are patterns based on collective assumptions. Your individual assumption, when maintained with conviction, can modify or suspend these lesser laws. This is the true meaning of miracle. Not a suspension of law, but the operation of higher law that transcends common expectations. You are not bound by your past, your genes, your environment, or the actions of others. These present obstacles only to the degree that you accept them as limitations. Change your fundamental assumptions, and these seeming obstacles become the very elements that contribute to your success. The states of consciousness. Your entire life is a movement through various states of consciousness. Each state has its own inherent conditions and circumstances. When you occupy a state of poverty consciousness, you experience the limitations and lacks associated with poverty. When you occupy a state of health consciousness, you experience the vitality and well-being associated with health. These states are not imposed upon you from without. You enter them through your assumptions, and you can leave any undesirable state by assuming yourself to be in its opposite. Many pray to be delivered from an unwanted state while mentally continuing to occupy it. This is like asking to be in Boston while refusing to leave Chicago. You cannot be in two cities or two states of consciousness simultaneously. If you desire to experience the conditions of abundance, you must vacate the state of poverty by assuming the feeling of abundance. If you wish to experience radiant health, you must vacate the state of illness by assuming the feeling of vitality. The divine process that I speak of is this movement from state to state, each bringing its corresponding conditions into your life. God is not done with you because this progression never ends. There are infinite states of consciousness available to you, each offering richer experiences than the last. The purpose of the process. You may wonder why the process unfolds as it does. Why doesn't God simply grant your desire instantly? Why the waiting, the unfolding, the bridge of incidents? The purpose of the process is not merely to give you the thing desired, but to transform you into the person who can receive and maintain it. The unfoldment perfectly paces your evolution in consciousness. If you received instantly everything your surface mind desires, Without the corresponding development in consciousness, you would either fail to recognize your good or be unable to sustain it. Consider the lottery winners who receive vast wealth without the consciousness of wealth, only to lose it all within a few years. Consider the person who achieves their dream relationship, but lacking the consciousness of being loved, sabotages it through insecurity and fear. The divine process works not just to bring you your desire, but to bring you into alignment with it. The waiting period, which so many interpret as delay or denial, is actually exact time needed for you to develop the consciousness that can contain your good. Trust this process. Know that God is not done with you. The perfect pattern of your unfoldment is proceeding exactly as it should. The promise. Beyond all manifestation of specific desires, what I call the promise, the ultimate purpose of the divine process working in you. This promise is your complete awakening to your true identity as God individualized. All lesser manifestations, wealth, health, relationships, achievements are steps leading to this supreme realization. They are important, yes, but they are not the final purpose of the process. God is not done with you because the work continues until the promise is fulfilled in you, until you awaken fully to the truth that you are God in human form, that there is no power outside of your consciousness, that you are the author of all that you experience. This awakening does not come through effort or merit. It unfolds in its appointed time, after you have exhausted your desire for lesser gifts, when you have experienced all that you wish to have and be in this world. The promise begins to stir within you. Signs of its approach include increased detachment from worldly concerns, spontaneous visions of spiritual significance, and a growing awareness of your identity with the divine I am. When the promise is fulfilled, you know beyond all doubt that you and the Father are one, persisting through the dark night. Almost everyone who walks this path experiences what has been called the dark night of the soul, a period of profound doubt, confusion, and seeming abandonment. During this phase, all that you have believed appears to fail you. Your manifestations cease, your faith wavers, and God seems utterly absent from your life. This dark night is not evidence that the process has failed, but that it has reached a critical juncture. It is the final purification before a significant breakthrough. It is the darkness before dawn. During this period, old beliefs and attachments are being dissolved to make way for a new level of consciousness. The caterpillar must enter the darkness of the chrysalis and experience the dissolution of its caterpillar identity before it can appear as a butterfly. If you are experiencing such a dark night, take heart. God is not done with you. This is not abandonment, but transformation. Hold fast to your faith, not with desperate clutching, but with quiet confidence. Continue to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, even when all evidence argues against it. Those who persist through the dark night emerge with a kite that cannot be shaken, a knowledge that cannot be undermined by temporary appearances. They become masters of creation rather than victims of circumstance. The transformed mind. As you work with the law of assumption and trust the divine process, your mind undergoes a profound transformation. You develop what the Bible calls the mind of Christ, a consciousness aligned perfectly with divine creative power. This transformed mind is not swayed by appearances. It judges not by sensory evidence, but by the reality of imagination. It knows that what is seen is temporary, while what is unseen is eternal. With this mind, you no longer react to conditions. You respond to them creatively, knowing that your consciousness determines your experience, not the other way around. You no longer pray to be delivered from circumstances, but realize your power to transform them through the assumption of the state you desire. This is the true second birth, not of flesh, but of consciousness. You are born anew into a realization of your creative power and your identity with the divine I am. The community of the faithful. As you walk this path of conscious creation, you will find yourself drawn to others who understand and apply these principles. This is the true meaning of church, not an external organization, but a gathering of those who worship in spirit and in truth. You need not proselytize or convince others of what you have discovered. Those who are ready will be drawn to you naturally. Those who are not will fall away, often without conflict or drama. This sorting is not your responsibility, but part of the divine process. God is not done with them either, though their path may differ from yours for a season. Share your understanding with those who show genuine interest, but avoid casting your pearls before those who would trample them underfoot through ridicule or argumentative opposition. The truth you embody will speak more persuasively than any verbal argument. The eternal expansion. The divine process never truly ends, for consciousness is eternally expansive. There is no final state, no ultimate achievement that completes your journey. Each fulfillment opens the door to new desires, new possibilities, new expressions of the infinite creative power within you. This eternal expansion is cause for celebration, not concern. It means that life never grows stale, never becomes routine, never reaches a point of stagnation. There are always new worlds to conquer, new aspects of yourself to discover, new joys to experience. God is not done with you because God, your own wonderful human imagination, is the ever-creating, ever-expanding essence of life itself. As you align with this creative flow, accepting its perfect timing and infinite wisdom, you experience the joy that comes from participating consciously in the eternal unfoldment. Practical application. To close our discussion tonight, let me offer some practical guidance for applying these principles in your daily life. Select a desire that, if fulfilled, would bring you genuine joy. Make it specific enough to generate real feeling, but general enough to allow for flexible fulfillment. Construct a short scene that implies your desire's fulfillment. Perhaps it's a friend congratulating you, or you simply observing evidence that your wish has come to pass. Enter a state of relaxation through whatever method works best for you. Physical relaxation facilitates mental receptivity. In this relaxed state, enact your scene in imagination. See it through your own eyes, not as an observer. Feel the textures, hear the sounds, experience the emotions that would accompany fulfillment. Repeat this scene until it feels natural, until it has the tone of reality. This may require one session or many, depending on your capacity for feeling and your attachment to contrary evidence. Throughout your day, whenever doubt arises, remind yourself, God is not done with me. The process is unfolding perfectly. Then briefly recall the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Release all anxiety about how your desire will manifest. The bridge of incidents will form naturally through the wisdom of divine law. Express gratitude for the fulfillment of your desire, not as something to come, but as something already accomplished in consciousness. Watch for and follow intuitive promptings. These inner nudges are often part of the bridge of incidents leading to your manifestation. When your desire manifests, acknowledge the operation of law. This strengthens your faith for future creations. Remember, the process I describe is not magical thinking or wishful imagination. It is the deliberate application of the creative law that shapes all experience. It requires practice, persistence, and unwavering faith in the midst of contradictory appearances. Final words. My dear friends, as we conclude our time together, let me leave you with this final assurance: God is not done with you. The divine process that shapes your destiny continues perfectly, bringing you ever closer to the complete realization of your desires and ultimately to the fulfillment of the promise. Do not be discouraged by temporary appearances of failure or delay. Do not interpret the silence as abandonment. In the depths of consciousness, in the invisible realm where all creation begins, your assumption is being given form and substance, preparing to emerge into the world of physical reality. Trust the process as you would trust the growth of a seed planted in fertile soil. Having planted your desire through conscious assumption, enter the Sabbath rest of absolute confidence. Know that what you have planted must, by immutable law, come to harvest. You are not subject to chance or fate. You are not the victim of circumstances or the prisoner of past mistakes. You are the operating power of God in this world, creating your reality through the choices of consciousness. As you leave this place tonight, go with the conviction that the work begun in you continues to its perfect fulfillment. God is not done with you. The process unfolds exactly as it should. Your task is simply to maintain the faithful assumption that what you desire is already yours in the one true reality, the reality of consciousness. In that conviction lies your power, your peace, and the certainty of manifestation. God bless you all.